On a chilly Friday night in late October, the streets of suburban Philadelphia glistened under the streetlights after a light rain. Officer James Cooper sat in his patrol car, drumming his fingers against the steering wheel as his eyes narrowed at the sleek black BMW 7 Series that had just passed him. It wasn't the first luxury car he'd seen that night, but something about this one caught his attention. Or rather, someone. Through the dark-tinted windows, Cooper could make out the silhouette of a black man behind the wheel. The sight triggered a familiar response in him, one that had earned him 3 civilian complaints in the past year alone. Not that those complaints bothered him. They'd all been dismissed, like most complaints against officers usually were. "Let's see what we've got here," Cooper muttered to himself, pulling out behind the BMW. The luxury car was doing exactly the speed limit, 35 miles per hour. Cooper followed, maintaining a close distance, watching, waiting for any minor infraction he could use as probable cause. Inside the BMW, Captain David Thompson instantly noticed the patrol car in his rearview mirror. 22 years on the force had given him a sixth sense for these situations. He just spent the weekend helping his daughter Sarah move into her new dorm at Penn State, and the pride he felt from their time together was now overshadowed by a familiar tension creeping up his neck. Thompson did everything by the book, just as he'd taught his daughter to do. Complete stops at stop signs. Perfect signals for lane changes. Precise speed limit adherence. But he knew from experience that sometimes none of that mattered. His grip tightened on the leather steering wheel as the patrol car remained glued to his back bumper. Officer Cooper grew increasingly frustrated. The BMW's driver was being too perfect, too cautious. In Cooper's mind, that was suspicious behavior. He ran the plates, but they came back clean. Of course they did. Still, something didn't sit right with him. The car was too nice, the neighborhood too upscale for. Well, Cooper didn't finish the thought, even in his head. Finally, after 3 minutes of tailing, Cooper saw what he was waiting for, or convinced himself he did. The BMW's right tire touched the white line for a split second during a curve. It was minor, barely noticeable, but it was enough. His finger hit the lights, painting the wet street in rotating red and blue. Captain Thompson felt his heart sink, not from fear, but from disappointment. He'd made this drive hundreds of times. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong. As he pulled over, his mind went to the conversation he'd had with Sarah just hours earlier about what to do if she ever got stopped by police. "Keep your hands visible," he told her. "Stay calm. Remember your rights, but be respectful." Now here he was, about to live out the very scenario he'd warned her about. The irony wasn't lost on him. Thompson pulled over smoothly, positioning his car perfectly on the shoulder. He turned off the engine, placed his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and took a deep breath. The interior light was already on, another habit he developed over the years. Officer Cooper approached the BMW with his hand resting near his weapon, another one of his habits. The car's high-end features and tinted windows made him extra cautious, as he'd later write in his report. He shined his flashlight directly into the driver's side window, intentionally hitting the side mirror to bounce light into the driver's face. "License and registration," Cooper barked before even reaching the window completely. His tone was aggressive, authoritative, the one he reserved for stops like these. The one that had earned him those complaints. Captain Thompson remained still, his hands visible on the wheel. "Good evening, officer," he said calmly, his deep voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "I want to reach for my credentials now. They're in my jacket pocket." He narrated his movements, just as he'd taught countless others to do. Cooper's flashlight beam never wavered. "Just hurry up and get them," he snapped, watching every movement with suspicious eyes. The BMW's interior was immaculate, the leather seats pristine. Cooper's mind was already crafting the narrative he'd use to justify extending this stop, maybe calling in the K-9 unit. As Thompson slowly reached for his jacket, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the side mirror. He saw himself as Cooper saw him, a black man in an expensive car in a nice neighborhood. But he also saw what Cooper couldn't, a decorated police captain with 22 years of service, a single father who just helped his daughter start her college journey, and a man who'd spent his career trying to change the very system that was now profiling him. The night air was thick with tension as Thompson's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, where both his driver's license and his police captain's badge waited. In the next few moments, this routine traffic stop would become anything but routine, and Officer James Cooper's world was about to be turned upside down. Little did Cooper know, his body camera was recording everything, every word, every action, every microaggression. The footage would soon become evidence in a case that would change not just his career, but the entire department's approach to traffic stops. But for now, he stood there in the dark, hand near his weapon, waiting for the man in the expensive car to comply with his demands. The stage was set for a confrontation that would send shockwaves through the Philadelphia Police Department and beyond. Captain Thompson's fingers closed around his credentials, and the next chapter of this story was about to unfold in a way that neither man could have anticipated. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Officer Cooper barked as Captain Thompson slowly withdrew his credentials. The leather wallet containing both his driver's license and police badge felt heavy in his hands, heavier than usual. Thompson could feel his heart pounding, not from fear, but from a deep, simmering frustration he'd carried for decades. "Officer, I'm going to open this wallet now," Thompson announced calmly, his voice carrying the weight of his years of experience. Cooper's flashlight beam intensified, and Thompson noticed the officer's right hand had moved even closer to his weapon. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. As Thompson began to open his wallet, Cooper's impatience got the better of him. "You people always make things difficult, don't you?" he muttered, loud enough for Thompson to hear. "Driving around in cars you probably can't afford." "Excuse me, Officer Cooper?" Thompson interrupted, reading the nameplate on Cooper's uniform. "What exactly do you mean by you people?" His tone remained measured, professional, but carried an edge that made Cooper shift uncomfortably. Cooper's face hardened. "Just show me your license and registration before this becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be." The threat in his voice was barely veiled, his body language becoming increasingly aggressive. That's when Captain Thompson made his move. With deliberate slowness, he opened his wallet fully, allowing his police captain's badge to catch the beam of Cooper's flashlight. The gold shield gleamed in the darkness, its significance unmistakable. The change in Cooper's demeanor was instant and dramatic. His face, previously set in a mask of authority and contempt, drained of color. The flashlight beam wavered, then dropped slightly. Cooper stammered, his hand finally moving away from his weapon. "Captain David Thompson, 15th Precinct," Thompson announced, his voice now carrying the full authority of his rank. "Officer Cooper, would you care to explain why you followed my vehicle for 3 minutes before initiating a stop with no probable cause?" Cooper's confidence evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. "Sir, I observed your vehicle crossing the white line." "We both know that's not true," Thompson interrupted, his calm demeanor never wavering. "Just like we both know why you really pulled me over tonight." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Your body camera is on, correct?" Cooper swallowed hard, nodding. His hand unconsciously moved to the camera on his chest, the red recording light suddenly feeling like a spotlight. "Good," Thompson continued, "because this interaction is going to serve as a teaching moment. Not just for you, but for the entire department." He opened his car door slowly, stepping out to his full height. At 6 feet 2 inches, he towered over Cooper, who seemed to shrink with each passing second. "Sir, I apologize if there was any misunderstanding," Cooper began, but Thompson raised his hand, silencing him. "Officer Cooper, let me tell you a story," Thompson said, leaning against his car. 20 minutes ago, I dropped my daughter off at college. Her name is Sarah. She's 18, brilliant, and wants to study law. Before I left, we had a conversation about what to do if she gets pulled over by police. Can you imagine that, Officer Cooper? Having to teach your child how to survive a traffic stop." Cooper stood in uncomfortable silence as Thompson continued. "I spent my entire career trying to change the system from within. I've conducted sensitivity training, implemented community outreach programs, and fought against the very behavior you've displayed tonight. And yet, here we are." The night had grown quieter, as if nature itself was listening to the conversation. In the distance, a car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating both men, one standing tall with dignity and purpose, the other shifting uncomfortably under the weight of his own actions. "Your record shows 3 civilian complaints for racial profiling in the past year," Thompson stated matter-of-factly. Cooper's eyes widened. He hadn't expected the captain to know this. "All dismissed, of course. But tonight you didn't stop a civilian. You stopped a captain with direct authority to launch an internal affairs investigation." Cooper's face had moved beyond pale to ashen. "Captain, please, my record. is now going to reflect exactly who you are, Thompson finished. But here's what's going to happen next, Officer Cooper. You're going to write your report exactly as this interaction occurred. You're going to submit your body camera footage. And then you're going to take a long, hard look at why you do what you do. Thompson reached into his car and pulled out a business card, handing it to Cooper. Monday morning, 9 a.m., my office. We're going to review this incident in detail. And then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about the future of your career in law enforcement. Cooper took the card with trembling fingers. The same hands that had confidently gripped his flashlight, that had hovered near his weapon, now shook like leaves in a storm. Yes, sir, he managed to whisper. One more thing, Thompson added, his voice taking on an edge of steel. Every officer in our department is here to protect and serve. All citizens, regardless of their race, regardless of what car they drive, regardless of what neighborhood they're in. If you can't fulfill that fundamental duty, then you don't deserve to wear that badge. As Thompson prepared to return to his car, a final thought occurred to him. And Officer Cooper? The next time you see a black man driving a nice car, remember this night. Remember how your assumptions led you here. Remember that the man you're profiling might be a doctor, a lawyer, a business owner, or even your superior officer. The weight of Thompson's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Cooper stood rooted to the spot, the business card in his hand feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His body camera continued to record, capturing every excruciating second of his humiliation and, hopefully, his awakening. As Captain Thompson drove away, Officer James Cooper remained standing on the side of the road, his flashlight beam pointing uselessly at the ground. He knew his career would never be the same after tonight. What he didn't know was that this footage would soon become mandatory viewing in police academies across the country, a powerful testament to the ongoing need for change in law enforcement. The next few days would bring a whirlwind of consequences, but for now, in the quiet aftermath of this unexpected encounter, two different versions of justice had collided on a rain-slicked street in suburban Philadelphia. And only one would survive. Monday morning arrived with a weight of anticipation at the Philadelphia Police Department. The weekend had given the body camera footage time to circulate among senior staff, and by 8:45 a.m., Officer James Cooper sat alone in the precinct's waiting area, his usually crisp uniform feeling suffocating under the fluorescent lights. At precisely 9 a.m., Captain Thompson's assistant called Cooper into the office. The captain sat behind his desk, the morning sun streaming through the window behind him, creating an almost cinematic silhouette. On his desk lay a thick folder, Cooper's personnel file. "Have a seat, Officer Cooper," Thompson said, his voice carrying the same calm authority it had that Friday night. As Cooper sat down, Thompson opened the folder. "I've spent the weekend reviewing your entire service record. 6 years on the force, multiple commendations for bravery, and yet—" He paused, letting the silence fill the room. 3 racial profiling complaints in 12 months. Before Cooper could defend himself, Thompson pressed play on his computer. The body camera footage began playing on a large screen mounted on the wall. Cooper watched himself in high definition, every aggressive movement, every loaded comment, every moment of bias displayed in brutal clarity. "What do you see?" Thompson asked, studying Cooper's face. Cooper's voice cracked as he responded, I see someone I don't want to be anymore, sir." For the first time since their encounter, Thompson's expression softened slightly. "That's a start." What happened next would reshape the department's future. Instead of immediately terminating Cooper, Captain Thompson made an unprecedented decision. "Officer Cooper, you have 2 choices," he began. "You can resign immediately, or you can become part of the solution." Cooper looked up, confusion evident on his face. "The footage from Friday night is powerful," Thompson continued. "It clearly demonstrates everything wrong with racial profiling in law enforcement. I'm implementing a new training program, and this footage will be its centerpiece. If you choose to stay, you'll stand in front of every cadet and officer in this department and share your story. You'll help them understand how bias corrupts good policing." 2 weeks later, the Philadelphia Police Department announced sweeping reforms. The incident had caught the attention of national media, and Captain Thompson's handling of the situation was praised as a model for police accountability. The body camera footage, with both officers' permission, became a viral sensation, sparking conversations about law enforcement reform across the country. Officer Cooper chose to stay. His first presentation to the department was difficult, standing before his peers, acknowledging his biases, and committing to change required more courage than any tactical situation he'd faced. But as weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. Cooper's testimonial became a powerful tool for change, reaching beyond Philadelphia to police departments nationwide. 6 months after that fateful traffic stop, the department's statistics showed a significant decrease in racially motivated stops. Cooper, now working directly under Captain Thompson's mentorship, had become an advocate for unbiased policing. His transformation from being part of the problem to part of the solution inspired others to confront their own biases. But the story wasn't finished. 1 year to the day after the traffic stop, Captain Thompson received an unexpected call from the mayor's office. The current police chief was retiring, and after a lengthy selection process, Thompson was the top candidate to replace him. During his swearing-in ceremony as Philadelphia's new police chief, Thompson shared the story of that October night. Change doesn't always come from confrontation, he told the assembled crowd. Sometimes it comes from choosing education over punishment, understanding over anger, and growth over retribution. In the audience, Officer Cooper sat in his dress uniform, his eyes fixed on his new chief. Next to him sat Sarah Thompson, now a sophomore studying law, who had driven down from Penn State for the ceremony. The body camera footage from that night had become part of her law school application essay, a testament to how one incident could spark systemic change. As Chief Thompson concluded his speech, he made an announcement that sent ripples through the department. "Today, I'm establishing the Office of Police Accountability and Community Trust," he declared, "and I'm appointing Officer James Cooper as its first director." The room fell silent before erupting in applause. Cooper, who had kept his head down for so long after that night, finally held it high. His journey from being part of the problem to leading the solution was complete. The story of the traffic stop that changed the Philadelphia Police Department didn't end with punishment or resignation. Instead, it ended with transformation of an officer, department, and eventually a city's approach to policing. Chief Thompson's daughter Sarah would later write in her law school thesis that true justice isn't just about punishment, it's about creating lasting change. As for Officer Cooper, he never forgot that rainy October night when his biases led him to pull over a police captain. Every morning, he walks past the framed body camera footage hanging in the department's training center, reminding every officer that change is possible, accountability is essential, and justice wears many faces. The incident became known as the Thompson Protocol, a model for turning potentially explosive situations into opportunities for institutional change. Police departments across the country began adopting similar approaches, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon in law enforcement isn't a gun or a badge. It's the willingness to learn, change, and grow.